LSU has the #1 transfer portal class. And the question I've been asked more than any other, how can they afford it? I'll tell you next. Locked on LSU. Here we go.
You are Locked On LSU, your daily podcast on the LSU Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Okay, let's get it. It is Locked On LSU, your team every day. I'm your host, Matt Moscona. Thanks so much for making us your first listen. We're free, available wherever you get great podcasts. Of course, on YouTube as well, so please subscribe. And as always, one of the fastest ways to help us grow is by leaving your comments below. So thank you sincerely for that. Thank you for helping make the Locked On Podcast Network the #1 sports podcast network. I'm going to be very candid with you. This episode might tank. It might. You may tap into this expecting an update today on Jordan Seaton, and the update is there is no update. I think the 5-star #1 offensive tackle in the portal out of Colorado, I think he's in no rush to make a decision. Oregon's on the quarter system. They don't start spring until March the 30th. LSU's deadline to enroll has passed, so he couldn't participate in spring ball even if he enrolled now. I think he's in no rush whatsoever. I'm perfectly fine with that. If all I need from Jordan Seaton is if you pick LSU, show up and be in shape when LSU takes on Clemson in Tiger Stadium on Labor Day weekend. That's pretty much it. And we will dive more into the Seaton stuff as I have more to share. There just isn't anything new to share right now, and I don't think there's anything imminent at this point, at least not that I know. And so with for all intents and purposes, LSU done. The coaching staff, I was told on Wednesday night, had a little bit of a loosen the collar celebration at Supper Club in the private lounge. Thursday, they were out recruiting as all the heavy lifting now is done after a 3-week sprint through the transfer portal where they landed 41 transfers, hosting 12 to 15 transfer prospects per day over that time period. An incredible lift, an epic haul, maybe the greatest transfer portal class we've seen. And look, the transfer portal era isn't that old, so it's not hyperbole to say this could be the greatest portal haul we've ever seen. But the question I've been asked more than any other is, how are they affording this? So I figured as they turn the page into the next era, the next chapter, to finishing out the February signing period, going into high school recruiting for 2027, and ultimately decompressing and starting to get things ready for spring ball, I figured I should take an episode, and explain to you how the money works, how they're doing what they're doing. And I have a really good handle on this, and I'm going to try to explain this in a very simple way that will make you the smartest person in your group chat, at your family dinner, at the water cooler at the office, whatever. That is, unless one of your coworkers is watching as well or listening as well. So, Matt, but again, some of you may find this terribly boring, and you may just want to show up Labor Day weekend to cheer on LSU against Clemson. And if that's the case, I respect that tremendously. And I promise the next episode I'm here, I'm going to be back to talking about the on-field stuff and all the things that matter. But this is something that I'm going on instinct because enough people have asked me about it that I'm going to do my best to explain this easily. So over the weekend, Matt Bowers, who you may know, Matt Bowers is one of the largest auto dealers in Louisiana. He's an Ole Miss alum, an Ole Miss booster, but has tons of ties to Louisiana. I mean, his stores are here. Matt Bowers tweeted over the weekend, the most expensive roster in the history of college football will be playing in Baton Rouge, Louisiana next fall. $40 million plus YOLO. Hashtag SEC, hashtag NIL, hashtag make it rain Lane. And so a lot of people have said, is that true? I think it's plausible. I think it's very plausible. I'm going to explain how. But I'm going to have to ask you first to go back with me, okay? I'm going to take you back, and I'm going to walk you forward, and it'll make sense. I need you to go back to a very painful day for LSU football fans. I need you to go back to November of last year when Bryce Underwood flipped to Michigan. Now, at that point, we were still in the collective era where donors were just giving money to the collective. The collective was writing checks for players under the guise of NIL, but it was pay for play. And at that point, and a lot of people didn't like me saying it, LSU was very poorly funded. They did a very poor job of fundraising for the collective. There's a lot of reasons for that we don't need to get into, but it was a very expensive time paying buyouts for Ed Ogeron and paying Jay Johnson after he won a championship and paying Kim Mulkey after she won a championship. And it was expensive. It was expensive. You had to give Matt McMahon a 7-year contract. It was an expensive time, and a lot of boosters were like, we got to pay the players too. There was donor fatigue. The 2024 LSU roster, that roster cost $5.5 million all in. You wonder why you had the product you did and went 8-4? You spent $5 million on your roster. LSU's quarterback in 2026 is going to make more than the entire roster did in 2024. So go back to Underwood flipping. Underwood flips, and one of the ironies of that is this awful moment, Underwood flipping, ended up being the catalyst for a very positive moment, which was funding the collective. You had a lot of people, very wealthy LSU fans, who were so off put saying, you mean they just paid this guy more and took out this number one quarterback who'd been committed for a year and we were all excited about because we didn't pay him? But how much y'all need? And so all of a sudden, LSU's boosters got very aggressive funding the collective. Brian Kelly, to his credit, did the $1 million match. You can crack on Brian Kelly, and he did a lot wrong. But that man also put up $1 million of his own money and got boosters to match it. And so it ended up putting $2 million more into last year's roster. And all of a sudden, LSU became very liquid very quickly. And what that did was allowed LSU to go fund its transfer portal class last January. That number one portal class with Nick Anderson and Jack Pyburn and Patrick Payton and Jamari Butler and that whole class, the number one transfer portal class in the country last year, Barry and Brown, they funded that roster with their money out of the collective. And they did what was referred to as front loading. Okay. So follow me here. All of a sudden, very quickly, LSU has a ton of cash. And we knew that the House settlement was coming, which means collectives were no longer going to be able to pay players. We're going to go to rev share. I'm going to talk about that in a minute. So all of a sudden, LSU has all this cash, and they have to spend it by July 1. Because come July 1, when rev share goes into effect, you can no longer just pay players from the collective. So the collective has all this money, and they got to burn it. So what do? They basically, I'm oversimplifying, but they basically paid the entire 2025 roster out of the collective because they had all this money that they had to spend because they couldn't spend it after July 1. So that's what's referred to as front loading, okay? So July 1 comes around. The roster is, for all intents and purposes, paid for. Not 100%, but mostly paid for. And July 1 rolls around, rev share comes into play. And what that means now is that athletic departments, any athletic department, can spend up to $20.5 million to spread across its entire athletic department. That's not 20.5 for football. That's 20.5 for everything. Most programs like LSU are spending 75% of that on football, roughly $15 million. So July 1 comes around. LSU, you can no longer spend money out of your collective. LSU's paid its roster, and they have $15 million in revenue share to spend on the 2025 roster. Well, the 2025 roster was already paid for. So the thought was, okay, now we've got this money. Let's hold it and do it again. Come January, when the portal cycle starts, we can't use the collective anymore, but we can use the 2025 rev share money to front load for 2026. Why is that an advantage? Because if schools weren't liquid enough last year to front load, they had to pay their 2025 roster with their 2025 rev share. Meaning right now, in this portal cycle right now, they've spent their rev share. So they can go recruit a prospect and say, hey, we're going to pay you X, but we can't pay you till July 1 when the rev share resets. LSU can say, we can pay you right now. That's the distinct advantage of front loading. And you could perpetuate this cycle year after year after year in theory. You could perpetually front load, giving you an advantage. So that puts LSU in a position right now where they had, and as I'm told, it's not the full $15 million. but it's a large chunk of that 2025 revenue that they were able to use for this portal class right now. Now, you might say, but Matt, that's great, but that's less than $15 million. How do you get to 40? Glad you asked. I'll explain when we continue. Locked on LSU, your team every day. FanDuel is officially in playoff mode. Every game day during the NFL playoffs, FanDuel is giving customers even more ways to get in on the action because right now, every NFL playoff game day, FanDuel users get a profit boost pack waiting for them inside the app. Each game day, you'll see a pack loaded with multiple profit boosts that you can apply to the bets that you like the most. Open your profit boost pack first thing on game day and see what boost you want to apply. The boost lets you lean into your game day instincts, whether you're backing momentum, defense, quarterback play, or coaching. The boost gives you more juice on the bets you already like instead of forcing you to bet something new. Every play feels bigger, and the boosts make your bets feel that way too. You make your picks, then apply your profit boost to go after even bigger payouts while the playoffs get rolling. So visit FanDuel, an official sports book partner of the NFL, and grab your profit boost pack every NFL playoff game day. So we've established the fact that LSU, because the collective was liquid, front-loaded the 2025 roster, and for all intents and purposes, didn't have to touch much of its revenue share money for 2025. They were able to then front-load the 2026 roster with that revenue share. But that's less than $15 million. Where did the rest come from? Well, remember, you cannot roll over revenue share money, meaning you have a fiscal year, July 1 to June 30, to spend that money. So LSU has that $20.5 million to spend, as does everyone, from July 1st of 2025 to June 30th of 2026. You can't roll it over. So you say, well, Matt, how can you spend spend that money on the 2026 roster? Because they're spending it now during this fiscal year, even though it's for next fall. And maybe it's a situation where you're taking this money and using a portion or using this money to fund a portion of a player's contract. Let me give you a hypothetical. Let's say hypothetically you have a player that's going to make $100,000. I'm just going to use a round number. You could take, in theory, $50,000 from the 2025 rev share and give it to them right now on January the 22nd or whenever. And then in the fall, when the rev share resets, you can give them $50,000 out of the 2026 rev share. So now what you've done is, while you're not rolling the money over into 2020, fall of 2026, you're effectively using 2 years worth of revenue share. The $15 million for 2020, the fall of 2026, and the just shy of 15 that they didn't touch for the fall of 2025, which gives you closer to $30 million. Now, the problem therein, and we're still not to 40 yet, I'm explaining how you can get there. The problem therein is that if, in fact, what they're doing right now is spending the 2026 rev share, right, the 26-27 fiscal rev share, then you no longer have the opportunity to front load. If you're spending the remainder of your 25 rev share and your 26 rev share for the 26 roster, that puts you close to $30 million. Not saying exactly, but close to it. Let's say upper 20s. But that means next year at this time, you don't have that rev share liquidity to front load next fall or next year at this time. And that is forfeiting a bit of an advantage. What I think Lane Kiffin is doing is saying, we'll worry about the 2027 roster next year. Right now, with all of the expectation to win immediately, let's go build a roster capable of winning immediately. So let's take the money available from the 2025 rev share And if we got to dip into 2026, which is basically all of it now, you're going to spend close to $30 million there, but you've built the roster you've built. This epic portal class with the number one player in the portal in Sam Levitt, the number 3 receiver, the number 3 overall player in the portal in edge rusher Prince Willuman Mielen, a former 5-star in Jordan Ross, a former 5-star in Trey Wilson coming from Florida, the number 1 safety in the portal in Ty Benefield. You get the point. Like, this has been an epic haul, but it costs, okay? So you've built this class, probably hamstringing yourself next year at this time. But I think part of the thought is saying, worry about next year when next year gets here. So let's say hypothetically with those two, you're close to 30 million. Let's say you're in the 25 to $30 million range. Well, where does the rest come from? Well, the rest comes from true third-party NIL. And remember, this is different than what the collective was doing. The collective was fundraising from boosters, writing checks for quote-unquote NIL, but really there wasn't equivalent value. Part of the House settlement, in addition to the rev share, was that every NIL deal over $600 has to be approved through an independent third-party clearinghouse, referred to as NIL Go, overseen by Deloitte. So they are going to determine true market value of these deals. You can't any longer just say, we're going to give the quarterback $1 million to sign an autograph. That's not market value. And we can have all conversations about what should determine market value. Different conversation, different day. Just understand that it has to be true third-party NIL. So how are they able to do that? Let me start by explaining to you what a marketing agency is, okay? Now, if you're in marketing, you're familiar with this, this will make sense, but I'm going to give you a Cliff's Notes version so this will make sense when I explain to you what NILSU Max does for LSU in the NIL space. A marketing, let's say you run a business and you have a marketing budget, but you're not good at marketing, you don't have time for marketing. So what you do is businesses can hire an agency, a marketing agency, and pay them to run their marketing. So hypothetically, let's say a business says, we have $100,000 to spend this year on marketing. Okay. Round number, just a round number. You can hire a marketing agency and say, look, we don't have the time to do our marketing. We have $100,000 to spend. So you give that $100,000 to the marketing agency. Their payment, their fee is a percentage of that money. And the remainder is what they spend in marketing. Billboard, radio, podcast, TV, social media, all of it, okay? That's how a marketing agency works. That's an important piece of context because effectively the way LSU is getting all these deals done is by acting like a marketing agency. Knock out my final quick break. I'll come back and I'll explain in detail how that works. Don't you move. It's Locked on LSU, your team every day. Tax season doesn't have to take over your life. This year, TurboTax is making it easier than ever to just hand things off and move on with your day. With TurboTax Full Service, you can have your taxes done for you by a trusted local expert start to finish without the stress or guesswork. Instead of spending hours trying to figure out forms, you can meet with a local TurboTax expert in person or connect online. They handle everything from W-2s to self-employed forms, and they work to get you every deduction. You can upload your documents, go about your day, and get updates right in the TurboTax app. It's a huge time saver and gives you real peace of mind knowing an expert is handling it. For a limited time, you can have your taxes done by a local TurboTax expert just for $150 all in if a TurboTax expert didn't file for you last year. Just file by February 28th. Take taxes off your plate and get back to your life. Visit TurboTax.com/local to book your appointment today. So I explain how a marketing agency works. LSU had great foresight 24 months ago to recognize this is where things were headed. True third-party NIL and rev share. So LSU partnered with its multimedia rights partner, Playfly Sports, to basically do NIL brand deals. When you listen to LSU on the sports radio network, or you go into Tiger Stadium and you see signage on the ribbon boards, or the ads in the program, or the logo on the field, or the jersey patches, LSU has outsourced all of that to its multimedia rights partner, MMR, its multimedia rights partner, Playfly Sports. And Playfly goes and sells all those things. So Playfly has a deal with, let's say, Coca-Cola. And so Coca-Cola pays Playfly as an agency and says, we have X budget, make it go as far as it can. And so then Coca-Cola has ads all over the place. Well, Playfly is the one who's basically brokering that. Well, LSU did a very smart thing 24 months ago. They went to Playfly and said, hey, could you do the same for our NIL deals with our student athletes? Well, sure. What that means now is if these brands would be interested in doing a deal with student athletes, well, now they can broker those as well, acting as that agency. It's a lot of foresight there to recognize it. That's why LSU was so far in advance. That's why Nike, when they wanted to launch that program a few months ago, started with LSU, because LSU had already built the infrastructure to handle all of this. The photo shoots, the deliverables, the money, the taxes, all of it. They've been working on it for nearly 2 years now. LSU was so far advanced in this. So it still doesn't explain how you get $10,000 or $10 million worth of deals, hypothetically. And I'm using a round number, okay, just for this exercise. But what could happen is, I think what the perception is we'll say, man, if a quarterback's going to make $5 million, how do you get a $5 million NIL deal through the clearinghouse? Well, you don't. And that's not exactly how this is working. Remember how I explained what an ad agency does. You give the ad agency your budget and they spread the money out. So let me give you a hypothetical. Let's say in a different era, a booster wants to support LSU. They write $1 million check out of their bank account and they give it to the Tiger Athletic Foundation or whatever needs it, right? They write a check and they get their name on a building, and as a result, LSU has this money to spend. Well, now, in that instance, that donor would write the check from its business instead of a personal check and write it to the NILSU Max program for NIL deals, for true marketing deals for their company. Again, no longer just a donation from the individual, but a donation but a marketing expense for their company. And so in essence, I'm going to use a round number again. Let's say this donor wants to give $1 million. They give $1 million from their company as a marketing expense. They go to NILSU Max and say, we have $1 million that we would like for you to do brand deals with student athletes. Well, they're not going to take $1 million and give it to one. But what if you took $1 million and you divvied that up among 100 different student athletes, or 10 student athletes at $100,000 each that could get through the clearinghouse, or 50 student athletes at a lower amount? Do you understand? So the goal here, instead of finding one booster to write a $5 million check for a quote unquote brand deal, which will never get approved, it's to get boosters who own businesses to make to spend marketing dollars with NILSU Max. That NILSU Max then takes that full amount of money and can divvy it up however it needs in brand deals to spread it out across multiple athletes, multiple sports, to make sure that each athlete gets what you think that they're worth or that they're entitled to or promised, although you can't write that officially into a deal. So when LSU is sitting down with a prospect, while they can't officially say, we're offering you X in third-party NIL, put that in a contract. That's why, by the way, the Brendan Sorsby contract leak was a big deal, because that had $3.5 million in deals through the MMR, the multimedia rights partner, Playfly Entertainment, which you can't officially offer that contractually. But what you can do is sit down and say, hey, look, our multimedia rights partner is I don't know this number, but let's just, for the sake of our discussion here, say is sitting on $10 million worth of brand deals. So we're not guessing. We have these monies already in the hopper to do true third-party NIL deals, and we believe we can get you to X number. through these true third-party NIL deals that will get approved. And you can lay out a path how that makes sense for this athlete to do maybe a handful of brand deals that get him or her, depending on the sport, up to the number that you're discussing. So it's not so much saying, hey, let's go find one business to do a giant NIL deal with that athlete. It's about growing the full pot of money for your multimedia rights partner who's overseeing all of this third-party NIL for you. So every time you have a generous booster, instead of saying, write me a check, say, write a check to Playfly and LSU Max from your business for a marketing expense that we can then go to our student athletes, do brand deals that actually is going to, in turn, benefit your business. And so that's how you can see combining 2 years worth of revenue share and massive amounts of forethought and commitment in the true third-party NIL space through the multimedia rights partner, put LSU so far ahead of every other program to be able to afford in this moment to do what it's doing in this moment. Now, can they do it again in 2027? I don't know. I don't think Lane Kiffin and Billy Glasscock know the answer to that as well. Everyone is building the bridge as they cross it. But you don't worry about 2027 while you're building 2026 because the landscape could change. And how they built 2026 is pretty impressive so far. Hope that helps. Do me a favor. If you're on podcast, please subscribe on your favorite podcast app. Rate us, leave a review. Let me know your comments. Let me know your feedback. I would love to hear. Drop your comments. Let me know your feedback on this. If you're on YouTube, smash the like button, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell so you're notified whenever we post a new video, and let a friend know if they love the Tigers. We got you every day. It's Locked on LSU, your team every day.